All right, hey everybody. I am here today with a civil case, or I should say a family law civil case, which I don't think I've posted for you before. So anyway, this is a family law treat, and everybody's not yet up on the speaker ID system. So I would say when it's colloquy, which is just the parties speaking to each other, just write that as you would a JC, and it'll start out in colloquy, so you can just use that as your warm-up. This is a freestyle read, which means it's untimed. This is great for stamina. I will just modify my speed as I go along. And periodically we'll do a speed fingers stop so that you can stretch. All right. And also for people who haven't had me for Q&A, once I start to the question and answer portion, you'll hear the click. So just switch your Q's and A's with every click once we get to the Q&A portion. All right, here we go. Ready and begin. We are here today in case 2013-587, David Qa Harris and Lisa Marie Corona. If counsel would enter their appearances and identify those with them, please. Amanda Meyer, attorney for David Harris, present with David Harris. Attorney Rachel Ardenoy, on behalf of the respondent, Lisa Corona, with my client, Lisa Corona. We are here on the father's motion petition. How would you like to proceed? Your Honor, I would like to call my client first, David Qa, K-E-Y, Harris. Can you state your name for the record, David Harris, and your relationship to this case, father, and you're a Florida resident? Yes, ma'am. And what are the children's names and ages? Ava Harris, she's 4, and Connor Qa Harris, he's 3. And you have acknowledged that you are not Ava's actual biological father, correct? Yes, ma'am. But how long have you been in her life? Since birth? And does she know you as her father? Yes, ma'am. Has her biological father been involved in her life? No. Is there anyone else established as her legal father? No, ma'am. And in May of 2003, did you file a petition for determination of paternity? Yes, ma'am. Prior to that, was there any case filed? No, ma'am. So neither child support nor paternity has been previously established for either child? No, ma'am. And has Miss Corona put you out to everyone as Ava's father? Yes, ma'am. Has she ever indicated to you that you were Ava's father? Yes, ma'am. And who were the minor children living with primarily? Me. And how long have they been living with you? Since birth. How long have they been with you without Miss Corona there? Since November of 2012. And November of 2012 or November of 2013? 2012. All right. And prior to that, was Miss Corona with you and the children as well? Yes. And why did she leave? She was asked to leave. And at that time, were you all residing with yourselves together? Were you living as a family? Yes, ma'am. And why was she asked to leave the home? She couldn't follow the rules of the house. All right. Can you give an example of some of those rules: staying out late, not caring for the kids, dropping the kids off early? And was she given chances to remain? Yes, ma'am. And how many chances was she given? Several. And at some point, did she actually relocate? Eventually, yes, ma'am. And where did she end up relocating to? Palm Coast. And to your knowledge, since that time, has she relocated from there as well? Yes, ma'am. And where is she currently residing? Winter Haven. And how far away is that? About 200 miles. And when she first left the home that you were residing in together, how much contact did she have with the children? She would call, but it was a while before she eventually came and saw them. Did she take them overnight? No. And why did she not do that? She said it was an unsafe environment for the children. Which, where was an unsafe environment? Her mother's house. And when did she start seeing them regularly again? It was a few months. Did you ever keep the children from her or prevent her from seeing them? No, ma'am. Did you ever have any concerns regarding her having the children overnight? In the beginning, I did. And what were those concerns? That the kids wouldn't be properly taken care of. And to your knowledge now, is she residing with anyone? Her sister. Do you know if there is anyone else in the home with her? No, I do not. And where are you currently residing? In an apartment in Callahan. And how many people reside there? Just me and the kids. And how many bedrooms is it? 2. So there's currently room for you and both children? Yes, ma'am. And you're requesting majority time sharing with both children? Yes, ma'am. And both have been with you since November 2012? Yes, ma'am. And you're willing to take on legal responsibility for Ava, even though you know she's not biologically yours? Yes, ma'am. And you understand that this would make you legally responsible for her support and well being? Yes, ma'am. Where you currently don't have a legal obligation? Yes, ma'am. And you also are requesting sole parental responsibility? Yes. Can you explain why? I've been with the kids since birth. I feel I'm their father. Is there any reason why you believe Miss Corona shouldn't have shared parental responsibility with the children? She left. She doesn't show any sign that she cares. And what is your current work schedule? I work Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. So you're at home with the children every night and every morning? Yes, ma'am. And do you also attend school? Yes, ma'am. And when and where do you attend school? Online at ITT Tech. So you're able to do that at home? Yes, ma'am. And what are you in school for? Criminology and forensics. And what is your plan for the future as far as school? Eventually to be a forensic investigator. And to your knowledge, do you have any knowledge of Miss Corona's work schedule? No, I don't. Has she ever indicated to you how many days a week she works? She said she works 6 days a week. And do you know where she works? Zaxby's. So do you know if she works nights or weekends? I think the majority she works is nights and weekends. So when the children are with her, the majority of the time they'll be with third parties? Yes, ma'am. And to your knowledge, who cares for the children while they're with her, her sister, or a babysitter? Do you have any concerns with the sister? No, ma'am. And when the two of you resided together with the children, who primarily cared for the children? I did. Who got the children up each morning? I did. Who made them breakfast? Got them ready? I did. And who picked them up each day? I did. And who fed them at night and bathed them? I did. And since there's been a temporary agreement in place, has Miss Corona complied with that agreement? Until last week, yes, ma'am. And what happened last week? She took Ava and told me she wasn't going to bring her back. And has she requested changes to the agreement? She's requested compromises. And you have accommodated her on most of those? Yes, ma'am. When the children are with you, does Miss Corona attempt to contact them? No, ma'am. And when the children are with Miss Corona, do you try and check on them? Yes, ma'am. And how did you learn that Miss Corona was relocating to Winter Haven? A week before she moved, she sent me a text telling me she was moving. Did she make any arrangements with you prior to that regarding the time sharing with the children? No, ma'am. And to your knowledge, has she filed a petition to relocate to Winter Haven? No, ma'am. And what is your current occupation? I work for a medical waste company called Stericycle. And do you recognize this document? Yes, ma'am. What is it? My financial affidavit. And do you recognize that signature? Yes, ma'am. And is it your signature? Yes, ma'am. And did you want to enter this as an exhibit? Yes, ma'am. Okay, is there any objection? No, Your Honor. Without objection, then, this will be received in evidence as Father's Exhibit 1. Petitioner's Exhibit Number 1 has been received into evidence by Ms. Meyer. And what is your current gross income per month? About $1,700. And do you have health insurance for the children? Yes, I do. Is there a cost for that health insurance? No, there is not. And is there a day care cost for the children? Yes, there is. And how much is that per month? About $320 a month. And that's for both children? Yes, ma'am. And do you recognize this document as well? Yes. And what document is this? Lisa's affidavit? Financial affidavit? Yes. And that's her signature? Yes, ma'am. Your Honor, we would like to enter that one as well, please. Miss, sorry, Your Honor, I do object to this because we do have a financial affidavit that is updated. This has been a part of the record back in over a year ago when this case first started, but I do have an updated financial affidavit. Okay, do you still want me to consider this one? This one, I think, Your Honor, would apply to any back child support, and the new one would probably apply for any current support. I will mark it as Father's Exhibit 2 in evidence. Petitioner's Exhibit number 2 was received into evidence. And we've already established that she's employed at Zaxby's, correct? Yes, ma'am. And according to this, her gross income per month was a little over $2,000. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. To your knowledge, has that income changed? Since she moved, she said it has. So you believe she's probably earning more than this now? Yes, ma'am. And since November 2012, when the children have been with you the majority of the time, has she provided you any support for the children? No, ma'am. Are you requesting that there be back support provided from the date of the separation of 2012, November 2012? Yes, ma'am. And that be based on you having the children the majority of the time and her time sharing pursuant to the agreement that was previously entered? Yes, ma'am. And you're also requesting that the child support be established going forward as well for the children? Yes, ma'am. And do you recognize this document? Yes, ma'am. Is it the child support worksheet? Yes, ma'am. Is this based on back support for 2 minor children and your incomes? Yes. Are you wishing to have that entered as an exhibit? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Is there any objection? No, Your Honor. Without objection, then, it will be received in evidence as Father's Exhibit 3. Petitioner's Exhibit number 3 was received in evidence. And according to this, the child support for the 2 children is based off of your financial affidavits, and the daycare cost is approximately $600 per month. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. So you're asking for back child support of approximately $600 a month for the 20 months since from November 2012 through July of this year. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. So for a total of approximately $12,000? Yes, ma'am. And you're wanting that to be paid monthly? Yes, ma'am. And would you request that and any current support be ordered through income deduction order? Yes, ma'am. And do you recognize this document as well? Yes, ma'am. Is this also a child support worksheet? Yes, ma'am. And is this based on your current incomes and the daycare costs for 2 children? Yes, ma'am. Your Honor, we wish to enter this as well. Any objection? Your Honor, if I could just take a brief moment to look at it. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I would just like to put on the record that this is considering 2 minor children as opposed to the 1 child who's subject to this. And that's what it says. I will mark it as Father's Exhibit 4 in evidence. Petitioner's Exhibit number 4 was received in evidence. And based on that calculation, it would be $800 per month. Is that correct? Yes. And that's what you're requesting to be ordered? Yes. And you also are requesting regarding tax exemption. Is that correct? That you have a request? Yes, ma'am. Who claimed the children for tax years 2012 and 13? I did. And are you requesting the exemption for tax year 2014 as well? Yes, I am. And going forward, we can split going forward. After tax year 2014? Yes, ma'am. And who's been providing the health insurance coverage for the children? I have. And you're willing to continue to do that as long as it's available? Yes, ma'am. And are you requesting to split any uncovered medical expenses? Yes, ma'am. And you also have a request regarding life insurance. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. You're requesting that as long as there is a child support obligation, that there be life insurance on Miss Corona's life, naming the minor children? Yes, ma'am. And you retained our office in this matter, correct? Yes, ma'am. And you have paid attorney's fees for us to represent you in this matter? Yes, ma'am. And do you recognize this document? Yes, ma'am. And it's an affidavit of the attorney's fees and costs. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. Your Honor, we would like to enter this as well. Any objection? No, Your Honor. Without objection, then, it will be received in evidence as Father's Exhibit 5. Petitioner's Exhibit number 5 was received in evidence. Your Honor, I also have to go with it the affidavit of reasonableness from another attorney. Any objection to that? No, Your Honor. And so to date, you have paid approximately $12,000 in attorney's fees. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. And based on your financial affidavit, do you need, strike that, do you have a need for assistance with this? Yes, ma'am. And you're requesting that Miss Corona contribute to your attorney's fees? Yes, ma'am. I have no other questions right now, Your Honor. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. All right, so let's take a speed fingers break. Go ahead and we're almost at 25 minutes. Go ahead and stretch it out. Everybody that starfishes, do the starfish. Tipsy starfish. Shout out to Dorothy. All right. And Wonder Woman or Super Bandit. Stretch out the lungs. Good job. All right. And we'll jump back in with the cross-examination. All right. Here we go with the cross-examination of the same witness. And as before, we will continue to vary the speed. And the colloquy sections, you just won't hear any click. When we are in Q&A mode, alternate your Q&A symbols with each click. Here we go. Ready and begin. Ma'am, do you wish to inquire? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Harris, I have just a few questions to follow up on what your attorney has asked you. Okay? Uh-huh. I'd like to go back. At one point, your attorney asked you if you were ever preventing the children, you, or rather preventing Lisa from seeing the children. And you stated that you had not. Isn't it true that it is your assertion that Ava told you one time that she saw her mother and her mother's paramour kissing naked? Yes. And as a result of that, you had your attorney file a motion for supervised time sharing. Isn't that correct? Yes. But rather than pursuing supervised, you and Miss Corona came to an agreement on time sharing. Isn't that correct? Yes. Okay. And so after Ava told you that, isn't it true that you prevented or rather limited Lisa's involvement with the children to a 1 day a week, daytime only, in the Nassau County area only? No. Okay. I was informed by my attorney that the kids, the paternity action allowed them to be taken within 50 miles. And I told her she was welcome to the kids as much as she likes, as long as it's within a 50-mile radius. Okay, so you did limit her access to the children, her children, within 50 miles of your home only after hearing that from a 3-year-old, correct? Correct. And as for your apartment, when did you move in there? 2 months ago? Okay. Is it your assertion today that your girlfriend doesn't come stay with you on the weekends? She doesn't stay with me anymore. So she did. At some point, your children were at the house. She would come over sometimes, but we're not together anymore. Okay? And prior to that, you were continuing to live at the home of your parents, correct? Yes, ma'am. Okay. And did you pay rent at that home? No, I did not. And when the children were living, so you didn't have to pay rent for when the children were staying at your parents' house? No. So there was no expense incurred as far as that goes? No. And did you buy groceries for the house? Yes, I did. Did you buy other things for the children? Yes, I did. Your attorney asked about a request for sole parental responsibility. Do you understand what sole parental responsibility means? And can you explain it for me? Sole parental to me would be me taking care of the kids primarily by myself. Okay, I believe you said that you didn't have any knowledge of her work schedule, but then you later asserted that you are aware that she is the majority night and weekends. Have you ever called her and asked her what her work schedule is? There was always a problem with her not knowing her work schedule. And in the time before you filed, actually, let me back up. At the time that you filed, you were still living with your parents, correct? Yes, ma'am. That was May 2013, correct? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Isn't it true that the parent, strike that, isn't it true that the children spent the majority of the time with their great grandmother at her house while you and your parents are at work? Yes, ma'am. So you're stating today that the children spent the majority of the time with third parties when they're in your care as well, correct? Until they start daycare. Yes, ma'am. Your attorney asked you about daycare expenses. You said you pay about 600 a month. Is that a fund that you are paying to your great grandmother to watch her great grandchildren? It was 320 a month, or child. And yes, ma'am. 320 a month? Yes, ma'am. Okay. And have you ever provided proof of those payments? Or does your mom pay that? Or who pays that? I pay that out of my I just take money out of my account and hand it to her. So at the time when the two of you were together, your attorney asked you about questions when you were still with Miss Corona. And at that time, isn't it true that Annie, the great grandmother, was watching the child at that point as well? Yes, ma'am. And your parents as well? My parents were watching sometimes. So primarily, it would have been the great grandmother and the grandparents who were taking care of them while I was at work. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Your attorney asked you a few questions about being accommodating and flexible with the parenting plan. Do you recall an instance when my client's brother was home from the army and wanted to transport the children and you refused? Transport the children where? For her time sharing? Rather than her come up to drive the children, did you disallow her brother ever from picking up the children? We had an agreement that it would strictly be just us. So you were not flexible in that regard. You would not allow her brother to pick the children up. No, I wouldn't. In terms of contacting the children, wasn't it my client who last week asked you to download Skype so you all could communicate with the kids on Skype? Yes. Have you ever done that before when the children are with her? Did you guys ever Skype before? No, I would call every single day. So you would call. Okay. As far as relocating, did your attorney ever inform you that before? The week before you were saying you received a text message, did your attorney ever inform you that we contacted her office and told her about the relocation? No. As far as health insurance, you stated that there is no cost. Is that a private health insurance or is that Medicaid? It's Medicaid. Okay. And isn't it true that you were aware that Lisa had already enrolled them in Kids First? I had them in Medicaid before she said that. I had them in Medicaid. This is the second time I've had them enrolled. Okay. So you're stating on the record, sir, that you were unaware that the children were enrolled in Kids First of Florida when you enrolled them in Medicare? Yes. Or Medicaid, rather? Yes. I'd like to ask you a few questions about the affidavit of attorney's fees that your attorney just entered into evidence. Do you have a copy to take a look at? This affidavit includes a statement here of all of the actions taken by your attorney and the cost that she has charged you. I'm looking at page 6 of 7. I think it's labeled, although that may not be the exact number. The date starts at August 8, 2013. Are you around the same page? I'm looking about a third of the way down the page, on 9-5, a retainer for mediation for 10 hours. Did you pay $2,000 for 10 hours of mediation? Yes. Do you recall we were in mediation for 3 hours? Yes. On looks like, well, a few pages throughout because it goes between payments and charges. But on the payments, let's see. Not on page 4, but the next set of payments. Looks like it says page 1 of 4 at the bottom. It says here, payment received by credit card. Would you agree? Yes. Do you have a credit card? Yes. Do you recall that in discovery, in your interrogatories, that you stated you don't have any credit cards? I have one. I have a credit card. Is there a reason why you have not provided that? No, ma'am. Do you think $12,000 is a reasonable amount to pay your attorney for this matter, considering this is our only hearing? Yes. I have no further cross-examination, Your Honor. Anything else of this witness, ma'am? Yes, Your Honor. I have a slight redirect. On the page that's 3 of 4, Mr. Harris, on 12-9, is there a charge adjustment on that one? Yes, there is. And is there a correction for the actual amount of mediation? Yes, there is. For 3 hours? Yes, ma'am. So you were actually credited the 2,000 and then charged the actual time, correct? Yes, ma'am. And then regarding a credit card, do you have a debit card that's also a credit card? Yes. I have no other questions, Your Honor. Any additional witnesses? Yes, Your Honor. Who would you like to call? I have Tina Harris present to testify, which is my client's mother. All right. Ma'am, if you'd have a seat at the end of the table opposite me, please. Okay. Can you state your name for the record? Tina Harris. And you're Mr. Harris's mother? Yes. And you are familiar with, obviously, Mr. Harris and Miss Corona? Yes. And did Miss Corona at one time live with you in your home? Yes. And has she ever asked to leave that home? Strike that. Was she ever asked to leave that home? Yes. Can you explain why? She was asked to leave due to her lack of engagement with the children when they were living there, along with the fact that when she and David decided to end their relationship intimately, Lisa began drinking a lot with her friends on her days off. When she would go to her family, she would never take the kids with her. When I asked her about this, her answer to me was, well, we drink and we go to the movies. I never know when I'm coming back. So they're here with David. Why does it matter? Your Honor, I would object to that as hearsay. How is it hearsay? It's one of the parties testifying. That's not hearsay. Okay, I overruled the objection. And when they both resided in your home, who primarily cared for the children? David. And this was both Ava and Connor? Yes, ma'am. Who got them ready in the mornings? David. Who took them to the daycare? David, most of the time. Who picked them up? David. Who would feed them in the morning? Normally they were fed at the babysitter's house because it was so early in the morning. And who would feed them at night? David. And who would bathe them at night? Primarily David. And put them to bed? David. And do you consider Ava your grandchild? Yes, ma'am. Do you treat her any different than Connor? No, I treat them both equally. Does David treat them any different? No. Does Ava refer to David as daddy? Yes. To your knowledge, has Ava's biological father ever been to visit her at your home? No. To your knowledge, does Ava know her biological father? No. And when Miss Corona left your home, she left the children there by choice? Yes. And how often did she come to see them? At what point in time? When she first left the home. I didn't see Lisa at my home for several weeks in the beginning. Rarely did she ever see the children. And did she ever have the opportunity to take the children with her? Yes, she sure did. And have you ever threatened Miss Corona in any way? No. I have no other questions, Your Honor. Yes, ma'am. Would you like to inquire? Yes, I have just a few questions. So, I would just like to reiterate. You stated that, don't reiterate, ma'am. Yes, Your Honor. I don't want cumulative testimony. Okay, thank you. Although you said you consider Ava your grandchild, you are well aware that she is not biologically related to you in any fashion, correct? I'm not 100% sure of that. You aren't sure that Ava is not, or rather, that your son is not on Ava's birth certificate? I'm aware of that, yes. When Lisa was asked to leave your house, was she welcomed back in that home afterwards? For visits with the children, yes. Was she aware of that? Yes. And how did you make that aware to her? Did you call her and tell her that? David made her aware of that. So you don't know that she was made aware because you did not. I was standing right there when he told her that she was more than welcome to come back and visit anytime. If you could just let me finish my question, sure, that way it will be easier for the court reporter, okay? So, are you aware of if Lisa had anywhere to stay, anywhere permanent to stay once you asked her to leave the home? I don't understand what you're asking. Are you aware that she had any sort of housing lined up for herself and for the children when you asked her to leave your home? She was going to her mother's. And are you aware of any of the arrangements of her mother's home? No, I've never been to her mother's home. When you asked Lisa to leave your home, isn't it true that you gave her 2 hours to leave? I asked her to leave that day, and that was approximately 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And do you believe that she left the children when she was asked to leave that same day because she knew that the children would be safe there while she was finding arrangements to sleep that night? I do believe that. Yes. So you believe that she did that because she felt that that was in their best interest at that time? Yes. And are you aware of any of the visits that Lisa made to the children at Annie's house? Yes. Okay. So did she strike that? So she did make visits at Annie's house, just not at your home? Is that correct? Not in the beginning. There were several weeks that went by before she began visiting the children after she left. And how do you know that? Because I see and talk to my mother daily, and I see my son daily when I'm not working. We all talk daily. Would you agree that a lot of the support that the children received while they were living at your home was mainly by the father or by the mother? Do you agree with that? I'm not sure that I understand your question. My question is, would you agree that a lot of the support that the children received while they were living at your home was provided by you yourself? No. Do the children eat the food that you purchased in the home? David purchased food, and we purchased food. We ate as a family. Do the children wear clothes that you purchased for them, along with other clothes that their dad purchases? Of course. I have no further questions, Your Honor. Anything else of this witness? No, Your Honor. Thank you, ma'am. You're excused. All right, speed fingers stretch. That ends that testimony for that witness. So speed fingers, stretch it out, stretch your wrists, stretch your fingers. Let's starfish it one more time. Tipsy starfish, lean back, lean with it, rock with it, stretch with it. All right.